moving along, guest speaker, I would love to welcome Kimberley. She's agreed to come along and speak in regards to that whole digital overload. And I will actually let her do the introduction, all of herself and who she is and why she's here, because, she's got a fabulous story and will speak at a conference as well. I've met her both through the group as well as at the Digital Employee Experience Conference with James, so back when, and also presented at the Digital Workplace Conference, which is coming up soon in New Zealand. I'm going to hand over and give the clicker to Kimberley. Everyone, welcome Kimberley. Do a
Thank you. I'm really excited and thrilled to be here. Obviously, I'm at Microsoft and the Microsoft Reactor, and I'm actually here to not talk about Microsoft and not talk about Microsoft 365. So before you all leave the room, because you're wondering why that's the case, I'm actually here to talk to you about humans. I'm here to talk to you about human beings and how those humans use or misuse that suite of tools from Microsoft 365. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the tool is, it matters what people do with them. And so today I'm going to really focus on humans. To start, I want to give 3 examples, and because this is recorded, I've left out all references to organisations, but I want to give 3 examples of where we can misuse and the challenges that it can cause. So the first example is an organisation that I worked with. They were rolling out a massive new sales system through Microsoft. It was an incredible system. It was set up really, really well according to all the business analysts that worked on the project. They did not test that system with the franchisees that it was being rolled out to, and they only did a day or 2 of testing with any of the admin staff. As a result, those franchisees actually went and paid somebody to create a workaround for the system to be able to do their sales on a day-to-day basis. Okay? So the second example is my mate Barry. Why is it always Barry when it comes to the union and who the union rep is? I've got a Barry in the room, do I? Are you a union rep? Okay, great. I'm sorry, I don't want to tarnish the name Barry the way that we've tarnished the poor name of Karen, but Barry was the union lead and the union representative in an organisation that I worked for. They were doing an enterprise bargaining agreement. They had some big goals they wanted to achieve. They had what they thought was the best change manager in Australia, or so they paid accordingly for. That change manager didn't need any communication advice and didn't need any communication support, and created a communication plan that involved weekly updates. And those weekly updates, I asked, so what are you going to do if you've got nothing to communicate? Well, that's okay, because we need to do the weekly update because the project sponsor agreed to the weekly update. And then we got to voting time, and there was an amazing campaign on Yammer. There was an amazing campaign on SharePoint. There was emails that had gone from an executive sponsor. And in the background, Barry had rallied the troops to vote no. He did that through the most powerful communication tool in that organisation, and that was called the rumour mill. The third example is I worked for ING Direct. I worked with a lady called Tanya Watts, and I will name her because she's an incredible customer insights person, probably one of the best I've worked. I've worked with a lot of great ones though. There are a lot of great ones out there. And with ING Direct, this was many, many years ago that I worked there. They wanted to do some great customer personas. How do we bring our customer personas to life? So she and her team did some massive analysis. Back then, wasn't using Copilot. And they figured out the two most common names of the customer from a male and a female perspective. And so then we actually created those customers as core cardboard customers that we carried around to the different meetings to say, when we were talking about a new product, how does that actually fit with that person? Then I was talking to somebody else about this and I said, oh, it was really great. We had their names and they decided that they were going to do the same. They thought that was a great idea. They decided that they were going to do the same. And although they had the Microsoft environment and they had Copilot, they decided to take about 10,000 customer records, including names, phone numbers, all of the customer's sensitive information, and load it into ChatGPT to get ChatGPT to tell them what the most common two names were. So what I really want to talk to you about today is two things. How we can use these tools, but mainly how we help humans use these tools and how we as humans use these tools. Because this can be the most incredible tool that you have available to you. So many options for collaboration, communication, working together, breaking down silos, or this can be the vortex of death of your organization. And literally, I've literally seen it happen. So I'm going to be talking human-centered design approach to M365 adoption and communication. I'm going to give you 5-minute Microsoft 365 tool techniques that I've seen and used. I'm going to give you 5-minute comms techniques as well. And I'm going to give you 5-minute value approaches. And then right at the end, I want to talk to you about why 5-minute actually really matters. So I want to start by saying I'm human. So I talk very, very fast. And I want to say, sorry, I'm not sorry. I have a mix of, we've got some people from a techie adoption background. We've got people from change. We've got people from communication. I've even got an absolutely wonderful woman attending who's just joined Full Stop Australia Against Domestic Violence and looking at how she can communicate and connect and use these tools in amazing ways in her organisation. So what I've had to do is I've had to kind of throw it out there as to all of the different tools and options. If you like it, if you like a tool, by all means, what I will do at the end is I will share all of my toolkits, all of my information. I'm here to support organisations and to support people in using the tools as well as possible. And for some of you who are techie, I apologise because some of this stuff is you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is not rocket science. Like, why is she even talking about this? But I'm telling you that the majority of organisations and the majority of employees in organisations, you know, you've still got some that are going, oh, we'll use SurveyMonkey. Why would we use anything in and bringing in all these tools and technologies that are just creating massive problems? So, and I'll also allow you to ask me to elaborate on anything at any particular point. So the numbers are there. 500 billion, and look, who knows? You can't talk stats these days because this is changing on a day-to-day basis, and who really knows where the truth exists. But 500, according to Copilot, 500 billion digital messages sent daily, 347 billion emails sent globally, texts, you've got 23 billion, social media, 100 billion messages daily on platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, social media posts. We're unable to measure across them all. Twitter alone, 500 million tweets a day. So before you even come in this room and before all of these people that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, this is what they're facing from a personal and professional perspective as well. And the latest stats are in that 88% of you use your phone on the toilet. Yes, you. And just so you know, those germs live on your phone for an average of 28 days, if you were wondering. So you might just want to do some social distancing because it might be required. And so we are literally connected 24/7. And so breaking through with your communications and using these tools in very strategic ways to change behavior is absolutely crucial. So how do you break through in 5 minutes? I'm going to give you some statements that used to work in the days of old. They don't work in the days of new. So it used to be, if you build it, they will come. So when you had a SharePoint site, oh my goodness, it's a SharePoint site. This is the most exciting thing ever. And the poor comms people like me behind the scenes trying to figure out how to load one document up there, and it takes them about an hour to do it versus the world we've got today where it takes you about 1 second to do it. But you now have so many SharePoint sites. So it's no longer, if you build it, they will come. It's if you build it, they won't come. So you can create the best intranet you've ever seen using SharePoint, and you can have absolutely nobody visit it. So how do you get them to actually engage and interact with that? I blocked out images, but I wanted to give a few different examples of how I've done that in the past and some tips as well. So this was when I was working for the NRMA, the motoring business, not the insurance business. So please don't tell me about the fire that you had and your claim still going through, because I can't help you. So what we had was well, first of all, when I was working with the NRMA was when COVID hit. Now, that was a time when everybody went to Teams and learned how to use Teams within a week. So they didn't have the option of the tool. They had to use the tool, and they had to use it very quickly. Now they've got the option of if they use it and how they use it. After we returned and had some return to our meetings back in the office, we still had a geographically dispersed workforce. Like, these are our patrols who are out there helping members on a day-to-day basis, literally saving lives in a lot of instances as well. And so what we would have is I had a couple of incredible leaders that I worked for, and they loved interacting on like a one-on-one basis. But then they were like, we don't know how to, really engage all of our people across the board. So what we did was we brought town halls back again, where everybody came together. We brought them back. But it's all very nice for town halls, but you've got hundreds and hundreds of patrols that you can't pull off the road, because who's going to help them with their breakdowns? So then what it was about was all of the information and all of the insights from that session. How could you break it down? And what I did was actually broke it down and broke it into chunks and put it onto our intranet, our SharePoint intranet. This exercise barely took me 30 minutes to edit these down. And then you know what? Our people could go, care about this, don't give a shit about this. And then they could go and engage with the different pieces. But we could also drive people to that site by doing little teasers. Are you curious about if we're hitting budget or not? AKA, if you're going to have a job in the future or not? Visit this page, and little teasers to get them to visit the page. So it's about how do you look at what's in it for them and why they want to interact. I was also responsible and on the project for the internal comms campaign to launch an electric vehicle hub on our intranet. What we wanted to do was we were trying to transition from petrol vehicles to electric vehicles, and we were getting our employees to lead the transition. And so we created an intranet that was an intranet page through SharePoint that was specifically all about the Q&As, what the latest topics were, discussion starters, videos, everything like that. Then we actually asked our employees, all right, so what information did you find valuable? And we looked at all of the data to see that, and that actually drove the external electric vehicle hub, which was a massive success at launch and still continues to be. So you can utilize your employees' voices and internal voices to also drive that external voice too. So my quick tips: promote the intranet is absolutely critical. You need to direct people through to the intranet through email. Okay, so we know that we've got, we know that we've got our email users out there. Just email them with one line headline story and get them to click through to your page. I know that this sounds dumb and it sounds simple, but so many leaders say, well, I don't need to email because it's on the SharePoint site, but how do they actually know? And you need to meet them where they are. We always need to be positioning the message of what's in it for me, and I'll come back to that one as well. And realistically, SharePoint and an intranet is your opportunity to build one source of truth. It's also important that that information is accessible by everybody. So it used to be make them meet you where you are from a comms channel perspective and from how we're using the different technology perspective. It's not anymore. You need to meet them where they are and you need to take them on the journey. I worked at Sutherland Shire Council for about a year, and I was responsible for the communications and community engagement team there. And we had, you can see the wheel, we had so many different internal communication channels there. That was my first time launching Yammer. Literally, really embarrassingly, created a campaign called Yammer Time, a play on good old Hammer Time. Gosh, the things you look back at in your career and you go, but you know what, it worked. But what was really interesting and what we really saw is that you can roll out something like a Viva Engage. For those people who don't know Yammer, Viva Engage used to be called Yammer. You can roll it out, but if there's not things that people care about on there, they're not going to come once again. It's got to be the what's in it for me. So we did a massive campaign where we did an awards program called Make Your Mark. And we talked to people and we got people to tell us how they were making their mark on the communities they worked for and the communities they served. Well, from that perspective, Yammer had a massive, massive response because we were plugging into what they cared about and their pride and what was important to them. You can't break down the silos. I continue to hear this from all these leadership experts. Break down the silos. It doesn't work. If you don't break them down, I don't think I've worked for an organisation ever in my 22 years that doesn't have some form of silos. And they're solid. They're solid. You know, it's the sales versus marketing versus product. It's the finance team that, you know, has the challenges with the IT team because it's trying to get funding, and then all these different languages, and where there's not the entire alignment with what the organisation is trying to achieve, there's always going to be silos, and there's always going to be silos because we're human. What you can do is you can join the silos and you can connect the silos. So I'd like to give credit to the team that I worked with at the NRMA who developed this, especially Pete Johns, who was the lead on that, who now works for Swoop. This is old, just so you know, this is a couple of years old, but I wanted to give you older examples as well because they are still relevant. This was our Communicate Always guide, where we talk to people about, if you're only communicating to people in your team, what are the channels that you use? If you are communicating to people outside your team, what are the channels that you use? But it was really all about that open and inclusive communication. Then what we did was, if you need to communicate to an individual, exclusive individual or group, which in most instances they didn't need to, but they said that they needed to, that there was email, that there was the different tools. But what we said is that's closed and exclusive communication. And one of the challenges that is massive at the moment across lots of organisations is Teams is amazing, but Teams chat misuse. We're seeing a killing of information sharing, knowledge sharing, just going down the gurgler, and just the amount of productivity lost through Teams chat is incredible, and that's become the new rumour mill. But I say to executives, you know, they're like, we don't have time to put that on Viva Engage. We don't have time to communicate that message. But what's happening is because they're not communicating that message, it's actually costing them 100 times that in their employees, creating rumors about that message. So how do we, with the tools that you have in your organization, and that's why I didn't want to focus too much on the wheel, because you might, from the wheel perspective, there might be some that you're using and some that you're not, or there might be some that you're steering towards and some that you don't. So I didn't want to focus too much on that, but just thinking about open and inclusive, closed and exclusive. The other challenge is in today's world, a lot of people say, oh, communication is just so hard. It's not. It's actually really, really easy. And I'm going to give you my 4-step guide that will help with any form of communication through any channel, through anything that you're working on. And I think everyone was told to bring an example today. As we're moving through this, I really encourage you to move through your example. So step 1, I'm a big Simon Sinek girl. What's the why? Why are you actually communicating? What do you want to be different because of this communication, interaction, or meeting, whatever it is? What is the actual why sitting behind that? Step 2, and sorry, when we say what's the why, just to really clarify, the why is not, well, I've got it in my communication plan that I need to communicate it. Or Kim, they just need to hear it. We just need to get it out. That's not a why. That's not a why. And I also have a guide to teach people about their finding the why and finding their why as well. Who's the audience? Who are they? How do they like to communicate? Do you have any audience insights? Think about who they are as both people as well as professionals, and also as customers, because my view is that your employees are the best and strongest sales and marketing and communication tool you have within your organization. Stuff any social media, stuff all of where the advertising spend goes, your employees is what it all comes down to, and they can make or break. So who's the audience? And that's a really important one, because we were talking before about when I used to work for Talus, who was a defence contractor. And they had people that would that worked at Garden Island, and they would scrape the barnacles off the side of the ship. And the audience, they actually, a few of them couldn't turn on a computer. And we were sending out these safety messages, and they had to read these safety messages and watch these safety videos, and you know, we'll just put KPIs in place, and you know, LTIs if they don't. But the thing is that they didn't know how to use a computer. So it started with actually teaching them how to use a computer. And it's funny because I've had executives say to me in the past, oh, but Kim, obviously they know how to use a computer because, you know, they use it to sign on to ATO and to MyGov, and, you know, they say that they don't know how to use Viva Engage, but then I know they're on Facebook looking at their grandkids' photos. It's all about the audience. And then number 3, which is almost, I want to say, one of the most important. What's in it for me? So if you're not telling me what's in it for me, then I'm not listening. I'm not engaged, especially with all of these messages that we're getting 24/7 from everywhere. So you need to look at what's in it for me, for the audience that you have. What's in it for them? What are the benefits? What is, you know, what are they actually going to gain? And then have a think about, what do you want them to think, feel, or do? So what do you want people to think from your comms? What do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? What action should they take? So I'll give this, you'll be able to download this as well. But this is my 4-step guide that I use for everything. So this can be before writing an email. This can be before doing a post on Viva Engage. I don't know, this can be when you're having a domestic with your partner. It works pretty much for anything and everything. So the other thing, you get more bees with a stick, the whole carrot stick. Okay. And I actually asked Copilot to give me some data on, do people move, because we in Copilot did say people are more likely to move away from pain than they are to move towards pleasure. What I believe fundamentally is you do get more bees with honey, and how you connect and engage and get people to use the different tools, to showcase the tools to them, and then to also use that messaging to get them on board. Now, this is way too busy for you all to read, but these are my honey tools that I'm going to give you the link to a Swoop report, and I'll explain what Swoop is in a couple of minutes. But these are my tools that you can use to really get into that what's in it for me. So I've found from the top 5 forms of honey for all employees is if you're asking for help. Okay, it's a very, very powerful thing if you're going out there asking somebody for help. From a gossip perspective, and using especially Viva, but other Microsoft 365 tools as well from a gossip perspective. Aligning people to the future and getting them excited about the future and the future state. Praising them. And I've also got a thing called my Movers and Shakers toolkit, because the second that you're talking about praise, you're talking about awards, you're talking about promotions, you're talking about new people to the organisation, suddenly everybody's listening. And then news and change as well. So they're the main tools that I use, and I will get this to you as well. This is one of my favourites. They're managers. Kim, they're our executive, they're our leaders, they're our managers. I've told them that they need to do this and that they need to communicate this. What do you mean I need to get them on board for it? We all know that middle level can be the make or break for anything that you're working on. And managers really do, and leaders really do as they wish. And it's really looking at how do you get them on board for that. I used to work at QBE Insurance for an incredible leader called Jonathan Champ. And this was the first time, and then ever since in my career, I've rolled it out to every single organisation I've been in. It was called Q&A, and it was a leader communication toolkit. And it literally told leaders, what do you need to know, what you need to do, and what you need to share. We gave them dates and important information, but it was literally every single toolkit that I took into any organisation from this time literally covered off that. What do you need to know, do, and say? Because our leaders and our executives, they're overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to do and that they have to communicate. And if you can make that very, very clear for them, that's incredible. At the NRMA, I turned this into a leader communication platform, which I actually created a Teams channel to do so. And then I actually spurred a whole lot of two-way communication on that platform. And it was really wonderful to see leaders helping each other, like, how are you answering this question? How are you dealing with this question? But there was always the debate, and I've come across this a lot. What classifies as a leader? Who gets access to the platform? And I'm like, well, anybody that thinks that they're a leader, why can't we give them access to this information? If it's non-confidential information and they feel that they're a leader, in my view, everybody's a leader. So I'll also give you that leader communication toolkit template too. My gut tells us, our employees, or you'll have a wonderful, well-meaning CEO go on to Viva Engage and notice, oh, this has got 7 likes and this has got 3 comments. This must be the topic of the... We don't know unless we look at the data, and we need to make data-informed decisions. And for me, so we obviously have the full M365 suite. I have worked within that suite of products and tools for everything except for my analysis. And that's where I use Swoop. So Swoop is a tool that effectively is, so we spend all this money on customer insights, customer data. We've got a whole team. Effectively, Swoop is a form of technology that is very, very safe and secure. And no, I don't work for them, but it's very, very safe and secure. And it's effectively like having an entire insights team for your employees with what this tool can do. So we set out, when I was leading the Transformation Management Office communication at the NRMA, trying to get people on board for our electric future, I set some behaviour changes that I was looking to achieve. I then used Swoop to help me to measure those. So I want to run you through what that looks like. So using the Swoop system, I was looking to how many conversations, how many people could we get engaged, how many discussions could we have, how much information sharing could we have on, it was at the time it was Yammer, on Yammer around electric vehicles. We were driving conversation, we were driving discussion. And so what we did was we set out, and I had specific goals around the increase that I was looking for, in the number of users who were talking about it, in the number of posts that we had, in the number of replies that were received, the reactions, and the mentions as well, the two-way relationships taking place around it, and the curiosity index, which is kind of like this question where you ask a question effectively. Then what Swoop told me is Swoop would tell me what are the top stories on Yammer around this topic. But even for my CEOs and executives that I was working around their communication, I would be able to look across the entire organisation and see the top 5 things employees were talking about. And I would then direct the CEO to be part of that conversation, whether it was Little Johnny's plastic NRMA fake toy vehicle, always number 1 for the year for communication, all the way through to, you know, electric vehicle drive days and what was happening. So what we did find, though, is that we found that we had quite a big risk because of the number of influencers that were actually talking about electric vehicles. So then we changed the way that we were communicating and the number of different people that were communicating about electric vehicles. We played around with different stories and we looked at all of the different communication to go with that. And even just the most successful Yammer post was actually a lady in the team, her daughter got an electric vehicle Lego. And it's nothing like Lego to engage people around the conversation. So what we really need to do is understand the data behind and use that data to change behaviour and to change things. I can't show you what is my favourite tool, which is Swoop for Microsoft 365, because the data, I couldn't share any of the data, and I don't have any of the data as I don't work there anymore from the NRMA, but we could literally see how many Teams chat interactions there were across the organisation. We could drill it down to Teams to see who was using Teams channels. We could have a look at how much they were using SharePoint and what they were using SharePoint for. We could see the email interactions, and you could literally align the data of who was using M365 effectively with the most positive engagement scores from an employee engagement perspective. So always remembering data first. All right, the last couple. People want to listen to you. People don't want to listen to you. They don't. I'm stoked that you're all still listening to me. But at the end of the day, you need to have a voice and figure out what that voice is. And you need to ensure that that voice is heard. And the way to do that, and I'll give you this guide once again, is I have a guide to turn your voice and your communication and your exec, and there's people giggling in the room because we all know this, right? If HR's in the room, I call this badly structured communication. If they're not in the room, I call it bullshit, right? If we have a voice and we're using bullshit, people don't buy it. Okay, we've got our radars up because every damn person in this world is trying to scam you in some way, shape or form out of money. So we see bullshit coming from a mile away. What we want is our employees, our people, our customers to be having those backyard barbecue conversations. And that was the whole strategy for our electric vehicle transformation and transition, was to get people at that backyard barbecue when people started saying, oh, there's not enough chargers. I'm not getting an electric vehicle. There's not enough chargers. That they go from answering those questions to actually leading the conversation. So that's how you move it from bullshit to barbecue. The other way is also, we need to think about our voice and we need to think about having a little bit of fun. When I worked at ING Direct, wow, we had some fun and we really engaged employees in the message. That was back at the time, I'm showing how old I am here, but Fruit Ninja. Does anybody remember Fruit Ninja when it first came out? Well, I was working with David Breen and an incredible comms team, and we actually rolled out Fee Ninja. And that was when ING Direct launched no ATM fees, which was unheard of at the time. We were the first to do it. So we created Fee Ninja, and literally every single employee was there in the office. They're standing there, they're slashing it. We had the virtual reality, they're slashing the fees. That campaign and the messaging that got out through our employees was unheard of. The number of people we had moving from savings maximizers, which was what ING was known for, across to every day was insane. It was incredible. So think about how you can make it a little bit creative. The other thing is how can you tell stories? Because people are not interested in the dry facts. And once again, I will give you this kit as well. And I just for reference, and you can see up here, this is adapted from Gartner and from Alstom. Alstom. So I got consent to use this and didn't delete see, you got to love a comms person when they find a mistake in their work that just got a little Microsoft red line underneath it. Okay, I'm not spiraling, I'm back. So when we're telling stories, it's the way to engage. It's the way that people will listen. And these are the kind of different ways that you can tell great stories and write a great story, starting with looking at who, why, what, and so what. So that's a great tool to work. I'm not going to talk about these. They'll be in the PDF, but these are the different stories that you can tell and that you can think about telling and that really, really connect. So what can you do with 5 minutes? And how can 5 minutes change anything? And how do I know? And I thought, I can't come here and talk to you about voice and talk to you about stories and talk to you about breaking through and how things can change in 5 minutes until I tell you how things changed for me in 5 minutes. So there was a year that I faced where I had some incredibly big things happen in 5 minute increments. So when just after I turned 40 and celebrated my 40th birthday, I had a mini stroke and couldn't feel my legs. And they found a small brain aneurysm that I had. This, about 3 months later, I was in a massive car accident where I took a while to come to, and I didn't actually know if I was dead or alive. 3 months after that, my daughter got mauled by 5 dogs on a farm in Vanuatu. They ripped apart her legs, her arm and her bottom as well. And we spent a week in Brisbane's Children's Hospital having surgery for her. A week after that happened, my son's appendix almost burst. So he was in massive pain. We didn't know why his appendix almost burst. And for those parents out there, Frank Green drink bottles. He dropped the Frank Green drink bottle that costs $50 for a drink bottle. My gosh, I've worked my whole life so that I can afford a Frank Green drink bottle for my child. Actually broke his finger. And my worry was literally like, will he play sport again? He also already had a knee injury. And then about a month after that, one of my dogs died at age 14. And then just under 3 months after that, my other dog died at age 14 and a half. About a month after that, I found a lump on my breast and was really quite concerned what would happen if it ended up being cancer. So these 5-minute things that all happened to me in the space of 1 year showed me that everything must go and I had to transform my entire life. And I did that in 5-minute increments. And for me now, I am the healthiest I've ever been. I am the happiest I've ever been. My children are absolutely thriving and I've created an incredible life. But what I want you to do and why I'm saying this is I want you to take that 5 minutes. I want you to take that 5 minutes to make that time within your organization, to make that time for you. Maybe it's learning a new element of Copilot. Maybe it's connecting better on Teams. The way that we can do 5-minute things can change our lives drastically. So that's what I want for all of you, is for you to think about your 5-minute plan. What could you change? And it's literally like one 5-minute change that you take back to your organization, whether it be you use one of the toolkits, whether it be you think about, okay, the next time I'm not just going to get frustrated that nobody's visiting my SharePoint page. I'm instead going to send an email that will drive them to it. I'll look at the different ways that I will change that user adoption and change that user behavior. So just to explain for me, I have 22 years experience in communication and engagement, and I work with organizations to both protect and project leader and organization voices. So that's very important to me because I've literally been working with some leaders who, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, their entire business dropped in half because of an employee's comment on their personal Facebook account in relation to something Donald Trump had said. Now, that was an employee's personal Facebook, right? So the world has changed, and where we do not have a voice and where we are not communicating, then that communication and that voice will be created for us and potentially against us. If we're also not using the M365 suite of tools and we're going off on these different tangents and trying these different tools and trying these different technologies and putting it into Copilot, it also into ChatGPT, it also creates risks. So I work with organizations. It's great if you've got a social media policy, if you've got an AI policy. Policies don't work. We're people. It's all about how you actually explain and get people on board for that. And then I also look at how can people project, and how can leaders and how can executives and how can organizations project through their employees and through the leaders themselves. That is my website, and then that QR code there is my LinkedIn. I really welcome, I know that I've run through things very quickly, but I just wanted to give you guys as much as I could. If there is something in particular that takes your fancy that you want more information on, or you want a toolkit, a lot of it is in the resources section of my website, but I'll be loading some more up, and I'm happy to also get you anything that you particularly wanted. How am I going? Yes, Zane. Thank you very much for having me.
Let me see if there's any questions from anyone online or in the room. Has anyone got any questions for Kimberley? What's your next 5 minutes? In the positive, you know.
So my next 5 minutes is, at the moment, every single day going to the gym, every single day looking after myself, every single day finding joy and happiness in my life. And then my other 5 minutes that aligns to that is then helping organizations, helping leaders, and helping people to really connect with their voice and their why. So I have learnt, because of that, the year that was, I've learnt that realistically, I'm grateful for every 5 minutes that I have, and I'm really grateful that you guys gave me so many 5 minutes of your time, and I hope that they were valuable.
There's nothing like adversity to define us.
You learn what life is all
We
about.
certainly do. And I don't think many of us come away unscathed in life. I think we've all got our stories to tell, don't we?